So we will be starting off with the seminar, inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. So I welcome you all to this webinar titled Knowledge-Based Engineering. In the next 40-45 minutes or so, I will be presenting an overview of the entire subject. It's a very broad subject and quite a general subject, can be applied to most of the domains of engineering. So I will be taking you through. So this will be the agenda of the presentation. First, we will be having a few introductory slides to set the tone for the presentation. Uh, and then we'll look into the overview of KBE, what KBE is, how it works, what it takes to build a KBE tool. And then we see few of the applications of KBE in different areas, a few case studies. And at the end, we will have the technology landscape and the career prospects of knowledge-based engineering. What technology goes into building up the knowledge-based engineering applications. And then at the end, we will be summarizing the entire presentation. And of course, we will be having few question and answers from the audience. So the objective of the session is to present a bird's eye view about this subject called knowledge-based engineering. Right. To start off, let's see what a few champions from the industry tell. So Jeff Immelt was the CEO of General Electric until 2017. He retired in 2017. So he interestingly, very much interestingly, he tells, if you went to bed last night as an industrial company, you're going to wake up today as a software and analytics company. We see this statement turning into reality all the more in today's scenario, wherein we see most of the legacy product development companies, manufacturing companies, adapting the new paradigm of digitization of software development, of data science and stuff. So it's a very relevant statement in today's time indeed, wherein you have a paradigm shift from the old legacy systems to you embrace the new technologies. And the organizations and the firms who have made this paradigm shift are continuing to survive in the market. And the organizations who have not embraced this new technology and the new paradigm, unfortunately, they become quite irrelevant in due course of time. So a few points based on which basis which the KBE domain was established. These are the few points what form the basis of knowledge-based engineering. First and foremost are the people. People are the greatest asset of any organization because of the knowledge they possess, because of the skills and the knowledge they possess. So it is imperative to capture the knowledge and at the same time reuse the knowledge. So this capturing and reusing of the knowledge of the people, of the human resource, should be a part of the strategy of any organization. Secondly, the time of an engineer is quite valuable and it has to be mostly used for real engineering tasks. As we see in most of our organizations, the tasks what we do get repetitive over time, and the amount of time we spend on real creative engineering work, it reduces day by day. And after a few years, it is almost equal to none. We end up spending a lot of time, most of our time, what we work, most of our time we end up spending on uh, repetitive and sort of non-productive works. The third point is a small productivity gain when it is multiplied by a large user base. Even if you improve a process by a very small percentage, but when that small percentage is applied to a large user base, the number of users of that particular process are quite large. It will yield huge results. So the magnitude of productivity gain should not be a concern when you have a large user base. And of course, when you prevent a quality defect at the design stage, it results in great savings for the organization, rather than when you have a design and then you detect some failure in the design, and then you want to change it at the last stage. That will result in a lot of to and fro work for the organization, a lot of uh, effort spent, time spent, money spent. So if you manage to detect those changes or those flaws at the early stage of product development using some intelligent techniques, that will result in a great saving for the company at the production stage when the product is actually being manufactured. And of course, the time to market, this is the sentence what we keep on hearing time and again. The time to market is very critical, because you have uh, the knowledge, what most of the companies doing similar work are almost the same, the level of knowledge is almost the same, but the competitive edge is obtained by optimizing your time to market. And optimizing the time to market greatly depends on optimizing the entire product development process, because this is the heart of any product. The product development process is a very critical stage in the entire product life cycle. So when you optimize the time to when you optimize the time of the product development, automatically your time to market reduces, and that will give you a greater competitive edge amongst your competitors. So these are a few paradigms or the philosophy on which the entire knowledge-based engineering was conceived and was uh, put forward. So let's understand with an example, quite a simple example. Things are more clear when we use an example. So what you see on screen are springs. We have a lot of springs. They are apparently very simple components, and they have a wide variety of applications, right from a pen to a heavy machinery. You have different types of springs. You have springs in suspension of your automobile. uh, Apparently quite simple component, but very critical components in most of the projects. So imagine your customer, imagine your organization which are specialized in springs, all kinds of springs, and your customer wants you to deliver a design for various springs. He gives you the requirement, and your job is to you are basically the technical head, or you're basically the expert in the spring domain, and your customer wants your organization to deliver the requirements of the customer. So how do you start off? So let's see the process of sequential engineering. In the absence of any modern tools, just legacy mechanical engineering, you see. So first you have your customer. He gives you the requirements, and then you have your technical team or your design team. Usually it's called as the design team. Your design team sits together, they see the requirements, what requirements you have, and then you see what knowledge you have to fulfill those requirements. You get together, you brainstorm, you come up with a solution. And you start building up your product. So this is basically the product development stage, wherein you start building your product of spring as per the various requirements whatever the customer gives. And then you have a design review. So this design review is a stage wherein you sit down with your customer, and you review your design, you present your design to your customer. He's also a he also has the domain knowledge of spring, so he'll be able to tell you the changes. Uh, he will be able to guide you, or he will be able to help you with the requirements. But unfortunately this happens, your customer is not happy with your design. He gets angry at you, he gets mad at you, and then it is compulsory that you change, because he has paid you. It is compulsory that you change. And by the time you come to this stage, by the time you come to this stage, you would already have spent considerable amount of time in designing. Your technical team would have spent a considerable amount of time in designing your spring product. But at the end of the day, after the design review, your customer is not happy, so of course you have to change. So again your technical team sits together, they brainstorm, then again they make some changes. The earlier work what they did was almost a waste, because they don't have any record of it. It was just sequential engineering. It was a reactive approach. In engineering you've got two approaches. One is the reactive approach. In Not in engineering, generally you've got two approaches. One is the reactive approach, second is the proactive approach. So what we follow here is the reactive approach in engineering. You get the requirements and you react as per the requirements. So the earlier work what you've done is almost nullified. You cannot reuse that work, and then you again get together, because the requirements have changed. Because the requirements have changed, you cannot reuse the work. Then it is a time for change. Again, your design team gets together. Again, you have a design review. This is one stage. 30 days are gone in this, and another 20 days are gone in this. Say 50 days are gone, and then again your customer is not happy. It's a general perception that customers often change their requirements because they themselves have got a particular market to address to. So, and market is very dynamic. So as the market keeps on changing, the requirement keeps on changing. So again, your customer is not happy. He gets again mad at you, and then at the end of the day, when you are not happy. So this is the typical process. What happens in a sequential engineering setup, and this basically led to the development of KBE. That how do we avoid the entire thing? How do we keep everyone happy? The customer is happy when all his requirements are met, when all his changing requirements are met. Let me put it that way. When all his changing requirements are met almost quickly, and the suppliers or the domain experts, here it is the case of spring designers. So these spring designers are happy when the requirements are met but at the minimal effort. So let's see how we can address this. So this is an example. Then in the due course of the presentation, at various stages, you will understand how this scenario can be handled by knowledge-based engineering. So let's see what are the typical knowledge problems. Knowledge is considered to be a very divine thing. It also comes with problems. It's not that knowledge doesn't have problems. You can relate these problems to the earlier spring design problem, a spring design situation, what we saw. These are the few problems of the knowledge from the perspective of an organization. Knowledge is often disorganized. It is there with a lot of people. It is not channelized into one system. It is there here and there, hodgepodge. We tell hodgepodge in the slang language. It is there here and there. It is insecure because your people may come, your people may go. It is insecure. Knowledge is quite insecure. And the person who has good amount of knowledge, if he retires or if he resigns from an organization, he doesn't go. He goes with the knowledge what he possesses. And then to train a person of that skill, to train a person up to that level, it takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of effort for the organization. Thirdly, knowledge is volatile. It is often changing. And fourth, sometimes you've got excessive knowledge. इतना पता है कि पता नहीं क्या करना. So these are a few problems of knowledge. What any organization typically comes across. And knowledge-based engineering, it aims to encapsulate all these issues into a system wherein these issues are addressed. Your disorganized knowledge, KBE organizes your knowledge, KBE secures your knowledge, excessive knowledge KBE handles. Let's see how that is done. And of course, volatile knowledge is stabilized. Your volatile knowledge is stabilized by using KBE applications. Now, finally, let's come to what is KBE. These are not definitions of KBE. That is after some more slides. These are thoughts. When people, when KBE was presented to the domain experts, typically domain experts are design engineers, who are analysts, are people who design the systems engineer. So when the concept of knowledge-based engineering was presented to them, these are few of the thoughts which crossed people's mind. So a computer system to aid the creation of a fully engineered best practice design that could be made by a whole team of domain specialists. So the moment this came across, we had a few thoughts. So the first statement led to the thought for the domain experts telling, will it replace the domain experts? So you're telling that it's a computer system to aid the product development process and the design process. So will it ultimately replace the domain experts? Will we run out of jobs? Will we have no jobs? And second statement was, KBE was a means by which a company's process can be channelized and translated into software, corporate software, to produce. Ultimately, it is to produce cost-effective solutions for manufacturing and engineering your product. So the thought which came after seeing this statement was, is it a computer that will run our company better than we can? So these are few thoughts which came to which came to the domain experts, which were perceived by domain experts when the concept of KBE was presented to them. Well, these statements are partially true, partially false. So to understand the authenticity of the previous statements, let's see how it all evolved, how KBE came into picture. So it all started when artificial intelligence came into the market. When the computer scientists they came up with a concept of artificial intelligence, where a computer software can not only solve your problems, but it can also learn from mistakes, amend the mistakes, and applies common sense, like we apply common sense using our brains. A computers we all know artificial intelligence has matured over the last so many years. So we all know in today's world the concept of artificial intelligence, intelligent uh, tools, intelligent software which learn from mistakes, which apply your previous knowledge, and then you solve your real time problems. So artificial intelligence, when it was applied to the space of product development, it led to something called expert systems. The concept of artificial intelligence was incorporated by the legacy design engineers. Design engineers can be of any domain: mechanical engineering, civil engineering, electronics, electrical engineering. To the extent of healthcare professionals, also, it was utilized by doctors also, to come up with a computer system that would solve your complex problems. If we don't have the computer system, those complex problems will take a lot of human efforts and a lot of human experts to do so. So the advent of artificial intelligence led to the discovery of expert systems. So expert systems was basically a combination of your domain mechanical engineering knowledge. Here I will tell mechanical engineering knowledge just as an example, along with the knowledge of your artificial intelligence. And then finally it was more optimized, it was matured over the years, and then that led to the development of knowledge based engineering. That is a more sophisticated that is a more uh, sophisticated version of expert systems. So it answers your problems, it clarifies questions, and it basically reduces the interventions of human being in the entire product development life cycle. So let's see a little bit history about CAD and simulation. So this presentation, mostly it will be I'll be basing it on mechanical engineering, and at the end I have a few case studies for other domains of engineering like civil engineering, electrical electronics, how it can be applied. The concept is same, only the application areas differ. So if you see at the traditional CAD, it all started with drafting, 2D drafting, that led to because earlier to that we had we had manual drawings. The engineers, the designers used to give manual drawings to the supplier and the manufacturer, and he used to manufacture a product based on those two-dimensional manual drawings. It all started with basic 2D modeling, simple mathematics, more focused towards linear simple systems, uh, because we didn't have the required resources to deal with complex nonlinear systems when it all started around 40 years back, 40-45 years back, when the entire thing of virtual design started. So virtual design started with basic drafting consist. Now the advantage of basic drafting was the drawings what we had, the 2D drawings what the supplier used to get were consistent, because again the human effort was shifted from hand drawing to the computer drawing, and then it was basic modeling, simple maths. Now we had that for quite some time. After that came up the modern design and simulation methodologies, wherein the focus was more on 3D modeling, and 3D modeling is also a thing of the past now, because we have matured, we have come a very 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 long way in the space of 3D modeling. We have a lot of sophisticated tools for 3D modeling. It led to parametric design, wherein the user, any component you design, any system you design, you could parameterize it, you could give the parameters, and it could develop a design for you based on the parameters. It came with embedded rules, non-linear. The focus shifted from linear systems because of the lack of resources. Now, this modern technology came up with supercomputing, high-power computers. So that led the way for non-linear systems, because the computing power of computers increased. You could go towards more and more reality of the system, real-time scenarios of the system, less and less of assumptions, and more of you could induce your non-linearities in your virtual design. And then the latest thing, of course, is the integration of artificial. That is one step, a notch higher than knowledge-based engineering. You have the integration of artificial intelligence, machine learning, statistics, etc., etc., the entire big data analytics. All these concepts you integrate with your legacy core product development processes. So these are so this is basically the development of CAD and simulation over the last so many years. So finally, this is knowledge-based engineering. It's a collaboration of cross-functional domain expertise. You integrate your domain expertise into a computer system, and that can be used to produce your optimized solutions. Engineering problems vary. Engineering problems are not static. They are very dynamic. They are very volatile. They change a lot over time. So for this, you have to be proactive. That's what I told in the beginning. One is the reactive approach, one is the proactive approach. So this KBE comes in the category of proactive approach. You forecast the engineering problems what may come up, engineering scenarios what may come up, and then you produce your product to handle those scenarios. So that can be possible when your product development methodology is agile, it is quick, it takes less time, to shift resources and people. So basically, KBE is a collaboration of cross-functional domain expertise. Cross-functional is a very important word here, because you have one domain person cannot become a KBE engineer. You have to be cross-functional, or at least you have to involve people from multiple domains. You shift your knowledge to a computer system. There's a structured way to do that, and then that ultimately that computer system or that KBE tool will help you in producing optimized solutions based on a proactive approach, which is quick, agile, takes less time to change, and is more modular. So it is basically a part of the digitization ecosystem. We've been hearing this word digitization all the more in the last 8-9 months, thanks to the pandemic, and I presume that's what is going to be the new normal. Everything is going towards digital. So in the entire digitization strategy of any organization, KBE forms a very important part of it. And then one interesting sentence what I found on the internet was, uh, the ultimate goal of the KBE system is to so the ultimate aim of the KBE system is to capture your best design practices and engineering expertise into a solid, structured, channelized database. So this will reduce your human errors. This will reduce the human dependencies to a large extent. Now, what will you do by reducing human dependencies? That we will see later. But these are few of the standout advantages of the entire KBE system. Now, let's see what are the typical parameters when you have an engineering product lifecycle. Firstly, you see the designability. These are the 4 parameters whenever you design any product for any market. You consider these things. First, you see whether do you know how to design the product. If you know how to design the product, you brainstorm about if you have the required knowledge to manufacture the product. Now, if you're able to manufacture the product, you think you sit together, and your sales team and your business development teams, they think, will okay, we have designed the product, we have manufactured the product, but will will we be able to sell the product ultimately? And even if we are able to sell the product, will the product be a profitable product for us, or it will be a loss making product, or it will be a break even product? So basically, these are the 4 important parameters what any organization thinks before venturing into any new product or optimizing or enhancing their existing product. Now let's see how KBE system captures these things. It captures your design knowledge, captures your manufacturing knowledge, captures the pulse of the market and profitability. And you can integrate your cost models in your KB systems. Now, the diagram on the top, what you see is typically architecture of any KBE application, you have a knowledge base. You have an just relate to this a Spring example. You have the entire knowledge base dumped into this part of the architecture, whatever it requires to build up the product. You have a lot of variants of a specific product. You have the nitty gritties, the intricacies of performances. Basically the performances are dependent on two, we design considering two things. We consider the material while designing, and then we consider the geometry while designing. These are the main two parameters what we consider. The entire intricacies, the sophisticated parameters, and then you've got a few parameters which are specific to your organization. You have a few parameters. For example, there are a few general parameters which are there in academics and in the general industry, and then your organization has spent a lot of years on researching about a specific parameter that influences the performance of the product. So that parameter is known only to you, and you don't want that parameter to be exposed to the outside world. So all those IP, your knowledge of the company, of your organization, comes into this knowledge base. Now inference engine is like an interface, which is is basically a tool or a program which decides which knowledge to use from the knowledge base, how to use the knowledge, basically control, basically your algorithm. How to use the knowledge, what knowledge to use, in what conditions, what knowledge to use, what knowledge not to use, and all that. And user interface is the methodology, uh, is the interface using which your entire KBE application is exposed to the user. Your user is typically, for KBE applications, users are domain experts in the field of mechanical engineering, basically design engineers, analysts, the performance engineers of any product. They are the users of any KBE system. So they use your KBE, or your customers also. Your customers, for service-based organizations, your customers are the users of your KB system, but they don't know the knowledge what you have put in your product. They want to see the outcome, and for them, they have a user interface through which they can interact. They can talk to the inference engine and the knowledge base. So this is basically a high-level architecture of your knowledge-based application. So these are the benefits of engineering. So in the typical traditional engineering approach, you have your creative work, which is almost 30%, and your routine tasks, what we were talking about in the beginning, that is up to 70-75%. Now with the use of KBE, what happens is your routine tasks come to 30%, your share of creative time, your creative work, engineering work increases. And then you, after increasing your efficiency, after reducing the repetitive task, after doing all these advantages, you save some time. Now what happens to using the time saved? Now using the time saved, this is the selling point of knowledge based engineering, right? Using the time saved, what you do, your domain expertise, your domain experts, they look into other areas to further enhance the product, come up with new products, of course. So this results in a saving of days, saving of time from days to almost minutes, not even hours. It comes down to minutes, because of, thanks to the high performing computers what we have in today's time. Now let's see a few. Let's see the life cycle of a KBE application, how it all starts and how it ends. So it all starts with identifying what should be the KBE application in your entire product development chain. It's basically a chain. It's not one process. So your product development starts with your concept, then your brainstorming, then identifying the measurable, quantifiable, your parameters of the product, and then designing, analysis, manufacturing, all that. So it's an entire chain, and you should identify what should be the KBE chain, a KBE application, because so that is the job of the KBE experts plus the domain experts. They sit together. The domain experts explain the problem to the KBE engineers, and they tell, okay, for this part of the product development chain, you can apply your KBE application, which will improve that process by say 30% or 40%. They give a specified target, and then you rationalize it. Only when you rationalize it, you ask your why questions, why it should be done, what if I don't do it, what money or time and efforts will I spend if I don't do it, what will happen if I do it, or why should I do it, what will happen, why should I not do it. All these rationalizing questions you ask, and then you consolidate your requirements. You finalize the requirements, you finalize your design, you finalize your software architecture and your cost, of course. What cost I will be spending if I don't do it, what cost, all those comparative studies and all will be happening in this. You'll do a lot of benchmarking. You see your competitors, who has applied KBE to what. Although it's quite difficult to get, but you try your resources to get that information as well. And then you should then implement it. You either uh, you basically sit and capture the entire design knowledge, your analysis knowledge, your manufacturing knowledge, whatever part you're converting, whatever part of the chain you are converting to the KBE. You sit and uh, you sit and create the tool. Basically, you sit and code, and you of course test it. After you test it, you create a package, how to deliver it. You just don't deliver it like that. You KBE applications typically are heavy applications. They come up with a lot of CAD dependencies, a lot of geometrical dependencies, a lot of material dependencies. So you sit and finalize the package of dependencies, whatever you want to deliver, and then you deploy it. In deploying, you have to implement that on the user environment, and then you train the users. Unless the users know how to use the application, they will not be able to appreciate the importance of any KBE application, because it's quite a straightforward application apparently, but when you actually train it, they will be able to understand what complexities it has captured and how it has made their job easy. Now we were talking about the cost. So this is the cost aspect of it. When you see it, it is quite self-explanatory. You see that the one-time cost of a KBE application is quite high, because you spend a lot of time in analyzing, in implementing, in testing, to and fro. A lot of work is there, but over time, again, so this is where the importance of identifying comes. So you have a task which is which is following this orange curve, whose cost is linearly increasing over your design process and your design time. And then you have a KBE tool. This cost, you're reducing it to over here. So over time, you see, ultimately, although a one-time cost is quite high, your effect ultimately your cost breaks even, and then you're able to save a lot of money. More than money, money is your money, and time is your tangible costs. Apart from that, your design engineers are at peace. They are the intangible advantages are your design engineers are more confident of the product development. They have a tool to assist them in the product development. Instead of spending time on unnecessary and redundant things, they will be able to spend time on a lot of more productive things for the organization and all that stuff. And most importantly, the entire KBE application is error free, because you don't have a lot of human intervention in it. Now let's see a few examples or the applications of KBE, or the different sort of branches of KBE. What all is there? Um, First is automation, wherein you automate your design process. I have a case study and a video also in the subsequent slides, which I will be using it to show how automation helps. Just to give an example, passing through. We design products. We make CAD models. We design CAD models or model that using any software, any modeling software. So instead of doing it with hand, instead of you creating the sketches, you applying your features on that, your KB, you just need to give the geometrical inputs to the tool, and in front of you your product gets created automatically. So this is called automation. And then you have customization. You can customize any software as per your requirement. The softwares what are available in the market, they are called usually the vanilla version. They come with a general requirement, but your company, say for example, we have a lot of legacy companies being there around for the last 120 years, 110 years. So they have over the years built up their knowledge and their processes. Now they want to adapt the market softwares to their needs, but for that they need to customize it, and that customization also is a part of KBE, wherein you add plugins to your software. You basically add new features or new commands to your software. Typically you add new commands to your analysis software, like you have your MATLAB, you have your modeling softwares like CATIA or Creo or SolidWorks. And then these two are quite interesting. These are simulation models. uh, these are basically, you translate your maths and physics equations to your mathematical models, and then you rigorously test it. So the advantages of these models is they are software based, they are virtual models. They are not real time models, wherein real time models come with a hardware cost and all that. The simulation models, you can perform a lot and lot of iterations, lot of tests. You can do a lot of comparative studies. For example, if you vary parameter x, parameter y varies by what percent, if you reduce it, what happens, if you increase it, what happens, all those comparative studies you can do. It's basically translating your equations to your maths. Basically you're translating your equations and physics to your program. And then I have a case study on this also. We will see in subsequent slides. And then you have data driven simulation. Data driven simulation is a very upcoming topic. That's what I told, a notch ahead of KBE, or it's, you can tell, KBE version 2.0. Data driven engineering is, you have your legacy data, your experimental data, and then you apply your data science to that, you apply your artificial intelligence, machine learning to that, machine learning models. And then the typical paradigm, you train some data, you have a training data, you have a testing data, and then you build predictive models. Typically, I want to tell you, you are designing a suspension, for example, and for suspension you have a few examples. You have a few legacy data you have about your suspension geometry, the materials and all that. You have your legacy systems which your organization has got over the last, say, 30 years. So you have those data, and you build up a machine learning model to predict the performance of suspension for different suspension geometry, which otherwise you have to make a model all over again. Instead of doing that, you make a machine learning model, and then you make your system intelligent enough to predict the performance of suspension, just by using, or just by analyzing the previous data. So this is called data driven simulation. A lot of companies are adapting this. Typically the product companies, manufacturing companies, they have a digitization, a digital vertical. They have, we hear about this new position called CDO, chief data officer. All these things are industry 4.0, and all these things are upcoming and emerging fields in today's engineering times. And then finally I have 5 case studies, quite interesting case studies. Let's see what how KBE is employed in this. So exterior noise simulation. So basically there's a process in engineering called FEA, finite element engineering. Basically it's virtual simulation. Instead of testing your equipment real time, you do it virtually. And then for that, you need to build up with those virtual models. You of course need your domain expertise, and then you need a proper structured way of making that, because they are very high much they are very much high. What do you tell, they require a lot of disk space, high computing, a lot of time to calculate and all that. Because FEA, the concept of analysis is that you break your entire car into small particles. So imagine your entire car being discretized into small rectangles of, say, 4 by 4 or 3 by 3 or whatever. And lesser the size, more accurate your solution. More the size of your small particles, more inaccurate is your solution. So for this, the knowledge-based engineering tools come a long way to help. Basically, you have exterior noise. Just to give a little bit background of exterior noise, this is one of the legislative requirements of any automotive what we have. The legislation is set by the government. This is how it is tested. You have a car, and then this image, if you see, you have microphones on either side of the image, and then you run your car at a specified limit in a specified gear for a specified distance, um, using the car. And then those microphones, they capture the noise what you have, and they will give you the results. So basically the outcome of these tests are your sound pressure level, and the sound pressure level has to be within the threshold of the permitted level. That is the legislation. And you, to be competitive in the market, to have that competitive edge, you cannot just meet the legislative requirements. For example, for four wheelers, the amount of allowed noise is 75 decibels, according to the standard. You have Indian standards for that. They usually follow the ISI standards. uh, the, it's called IS 3028. IS 3028 is the standard which regulates the exterior noise. So if 75 decibels is your allowed one, you cannot have 74 decibels. You have to have as less as possible to maintain that competitive edge, right? So for this, you need to have the simulation methods which will allow you to simulate this entire one, your microphones, your distance from microphones, your different components of car. If you have to do it in the physical testing, it will take a lot of time, lot of money. You have to go to the place where it actually tests. Not every company has these testing facilities in their campus. It comes at a great cost, so for this you go with the virtual simulation models, and then of course to validate those models you check with your experimental value, and if the difference is quite less, then you continue with the virtual models. So in the simulation of noise, the typical methodology is you have so from the vehicle to the microphone, you have the air as the medium which carries the sound. So basically you have to account for the modeling of the air also. So you model the air, you put in your entire physics, what frequency of sound you want to have, and then you make it parametric so that you can change your frequency of sound, and then you can observe the differences in the results and all that. And then you can, in the virtual models, you can also isolate your components. For example, you just the main sources of noise in a vehicle are engine, your powertrain, your suspension, and your tires. So basically you can isolate your components in your simulation, that you cannot do it on a real time car, right? You cannot just isolate your engine, only test the noise for engine. But you can do it on your simulation models. You can isolate only your engines and test for the engine noise only. You can isolate only for your tires and test for the engine noise only. So this is an example wherein again, this is picked up from the internet. It's an open source. All these images and all what I've shown you, these are all open source, picked up from the open source websites. So here I have shown you an example of a tire. So here you have a tire, and then these bubbles are representative of air. You basically form a air boundary which basically captures, and then you have the microphones. So all these trial and errors, mix and match, you can do in the simulation models. This is one case study relating to the simulation and analysis front. Now this case study is about the design automation. What I was telling you, right? We can just give the inputs, and in front of you, you can have your model created. So you have to just give your inputs for the design of a gear like this, and in front of your eyes your model gets created. If you don't have it, what will happen to appreciate? Let's consider we don't have it. If you don't have it, gear design is quite a very complicated process. Uh, you have to first, a lot of engineering and physics goes into that. You have to first finalize the dimensions, give it properly. You cannot have human errors. Give the planes properly, give the dimensions of the lines and the topology, basically, which a topology is basically the simple geometries which make up the complex model. If you don't have that, a design engineer, he takes around a lot of days to create that. But this video what I show you, so I just show you the a 2-minute video. You can actually appreciate, okay, it's right here. Yeah, just let's see that for a minute.
Abdullah bhai, please make it full screen. Yeah, okay, that's good.
Yeah, so here you select the application what you do, and then you give the parameters, all your parameters here. You will be able to give all your geometrical input parameters over here, or you can also give a default values. You can change your parameters for comparison, or you can give a default value to check your gear design. Now when you give default parameters, these parameters are loaded in the UI. You select the plane on which you want to create your gear. This is a 3-dimensional modeling space. It's interesting how it gets created. Just observe the screen. You've selected the plane now. Observe it now. See, it gets created. All your gear parameters, the teeth are getting created. Tuck, 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 tuck. All these teeth get created of the gear. The entire model is created in front of you just at a click of a button. And then you can vary your parameters, do whatever you want using. Oh, I'm sorry. Right. So this was one sort of demo, again open source, to just let you appreciate what the KBE tool can do. But to make this tool, to make this UI, it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of proper software architecture planning, software testing, and good accuracy, good physics knowledge, good knowledge of geometry of the gear, and all that stuff. Again, okay, now we have seen an example from the simulation front. We have seen an example from the uh, from the CAD modeling front. Let's see an example from there's something called functioning, functional modeling in the analysis domain. This I learned a few days back. You've got two overviews. One, you have the FEA based simulation wherein you discretize your entire geometry into small parts, and then you apply your physics equation on those geometry to get the results. And then second thing is you have functional modeling. Functional modeling is you translate your equations into your computer software, and then you make it so much modularized that you can do a lot of plug and play in that and check the performances. Now typically we have an engine. To calculate the power of an engine, a lot of different teams, a lot of different companies also, they come together. It's not a job of one company, because product development to come up with a automotive, for example, one company does not do it. A combination of lot of OEMs plus suppliers plus vendors plus ABC companies, a lot of companies do that. So to estimate the power of an engine, this is the simple methodology using our physics and math, right? Now let me tell you how KBE is a good approach over here. Now this is the equation to calculate the power of an engine. Simple 12 standard physics, 2 pi nt by 60. Now, but this equation is not used by the company. This equation is modified. The company, as I told you, the company has built up their knowledge for the last 60 years. They have their own correction factors. They have a lot of parameters what they have. So they build up a mathematical model for this. Now, if you see the term called T, this is basically the torque. So to calculate the torque, you have this formula. This is the total traction force into the wheel radius. Now, again, the main parameter here is the traction force. The traction force is a combination of three main things. One is the RR, that is the rolling resistance of tire. One is the gradient on which the Gadi or the vehicle should climb, and third is aerodynamic forces it should come across, it should overcome, and of course the inertia. Only if it overcomes the inertia, it should overcome all these forces in order to propel in the forward direction. Now again, this tractive force can be calculated by the organization what makes the engines. Typically we have engine manufacturers which do all these calculations. They come up, but again, the rolling resistance is not their job. Rolling resistance is done by the people who make tires. Basically they are done by the tire suppliers. Again, rolling resistance is not very simple. It's a function of velocity load academically, but again the company has their own influential parameters. Say XY parameters are the influential parameters of the company. Now if you have a KBE tool which again the same thing is with the aerodynamic drag. Again, it's a function of your vehicle shape, your viscosity of the fluid, your air viscosity. Again, it changes with temperature and all that. Again, a few company specific parameters like A and B. Now we cannot seamlessly share all this information using your meetings or on mails. We have to have a structured tool which can talk to each other. One tool to calculate RR, one tool to calculate aerodynamic drag, one tool to calculate this entire thing. Now all these three tools should talk to each other so that your product your ultimate aim is to calculate the power of an engine. So that becomes quite simple. So that's how KBE helps. You have your domain expertise, they go behind the scene. They are basically physicists. They are physicists and the numerical simulation experts. They go behind the scene, they sit and model these equations in a proper way, and they create a package so that I will, as a tire manufacturer, I will, for example, I will just give the RR model to the manufacturing company. As an aerodynamic expert, I will give the model just a simple application, an exe application or a DLL application. I will give it to the person who calculates the power, so he can just use the value of RR and coefficient of drag without knowing what goes into that, without knowing what parameters they have used to calculate the resistance. So in this way the company can use our knowledge. At the same time, they will not know what knowledge we have used. So this is one application of functional modeling of the KBE. Now, if you see in civil engineering, this I did a little bit of research. I just went through some papers. So this I found out. So you have facade. Facade is basically the front, the exterior walls of any company, of the exterior walls of any building. So I came to know that it's quite an interdisciplinary component. You have inputs from architects, from contractors, from the people who, the site engineers and the customer. So it's interdisciplinary, it's quite interdependent on many teams. It's technically very complex. So we already have a KBE tool in the literature for the facade design. So this tool, you just give the inputs for the facade and your facade design gets created. Now those inputs are got from your all your stakeholders, from your architects, from your contractor, from your customer and all that. And again, similarly, you have the design of stairs. The design of stairs also can be automatized. It can be automated. If you see the UI over here, uh, so this is the UI to create the design, to create stairs. You just need to give the parameters of what stairs you want, and your design, your modeling of stairs gets created, and it also gives you the simulation results. What force can be applied, what will be the behavior of your stairs on the specific force applied. So these are a few examples in civil engineering. And then you have a few examples in auto in electrical and electronics engineering. Again, in ABS, in the development of ABS systems. ABS is anti-lock braking systems as part of the ADAS features of the vehicles. A lot of embedded systems knowledge goes into this, but KBE applications comes into play when you actually go behind the scene and you develop the algorithm, you develop what equations go into the ABS systems, what should be the wheel speed, what should be monitored. It's basically all sensors and actuators. And then you have a link between, you see the second point over here, you have a data model of the software, of the software components, basically your algorithm and all that. It can be automatically updated when your physical parameters change. ABS is affected by a lot of physical parameters, your wheel orientation, your caster, your camber, your suspension geometry, and all that. So all those so when those geometries change, you need not again reflect it manually in your ABS software. You can, so there's a KBE tool which links both physical and virtual, and once the physical changes, your virtual also changes. So this is one, and this again, this is from IEEE paper what I have taken. This is a general methodology of design. It can be generalized to the extent that the applications can change. The same architecture can be used for other ADAS systems, like you have TPMS, you have night vision driving system, you have a lot of ADAS features, electronic stability program, electronic brake control, and all that. Now coming to the landscape of what it takes to be a KBE engineers. On the top, in the first half, this is the programming technology landscape, and in the second half, these are the functional knowledge what you need to have. Now you see a lot of technologies on the screen. It's not compulsory that you know all of them. Of course, no one can know all of them, but you need to have at least one from the above first half and one from the second half. And these can be linked to each other. For example, C++ can be linked to CATIA, it can be linked to Siemens, it can be linked to ANSYS, Python can be linked to all these things, and it is like that. VB.NET is of course old technology for software. Software engineers usually they think they still work on VB.NET, but CATIA, specific to the modeling softwares, CATIA and NX, and even SolidWorks and Creo and all those softwares, they still have the APIs for VB.NET. APIs are basically the exposure of functionalities of these softwares using these VB.NET programming tools. This is of course MATLAB. MATLAB is used for scientific programming with good mathematical capabilities, and now most of them are moving from MATLAB to Python because it is open source, which also has good scientific, you know, what numerical capabilities. Uh, and then you okay, now these two things are okay. The last three things are quite interesting. This okay, sorry. So this one after MATLAB, what you see here is called CAA. This is the architecture of CAA. CAA is the technology on which this CATIA is written and built. So you can link this CATIA to tight. It can be tightly coupled with CAA. If you know CAA, you can get a handle and control CATIA, do whatever you want. It goes to the highest level of automation customization. You can even alter the topology of the software. NX Open is linked to NX this software. NX Open is the APIs for this software. You've got this is basically based on VB.NET. You've got C++ APIs also. Now, AutoSAR is a framework, software framework, which was conceived by a lot of automobile manufacturers for embedded systems. So this is a very interesting and upcoming field, good for people who want to have the who want to venture into embedded systems. Now, in the functional knowledge, I have written science of systems. Now, what is science of systems? You need to know the physics and chemistry of the engineering systems what you're working on. For example, you're working on an engine. You need to know the physics of engine, how an engine works. You need to know the chemistry of an engine also. What oils have what chemical properties and all that. So science of systems is also very important to work on KBE. And then of course these are the tools. ANSYS is you can customize, automate ANSYS using again C++ and Python. Uh, ANSYS is just an example. Any simulation tool you can take and you can automate as per your requirement. Autodesk Revit is a civil engineering tool. It's a BIM tool, building modeler. BIM tool used widely in the market by civil engineers, MEP engineers. You can again, I was just going through. It's amazing. C plus. It is based on C++. It also has .NET APIs. You can customize your structural designs. You can automate your designs using these APIs. And of course, PSIM is a tool used by electrical electronics engineers for simulations. PSIM is open source tool. MATLAB, it is somewhat similar to MATLAB. MATLAB Simulink, not scripting, but MATLAB Simulink. You can have one-dimensional blocks, and then you can simulate. It is widely used in the field of electrical electronics, electric vehicles to come up with those converters, batteries, to model the batteries, to model the motors, to model the converters. So these are the technology landscape of KBE. You don't need to have all the skills. Combination of any skills would be good to start off. And what about a career in KBE? As I told, a KBE engineer is a combination of your software skills and your physics and your domain expertise. Here I have taken the example of knowledge of mechanical engineering. This can be replaced by civil, electrical, electronics, and even healthcare. A lot of companies have come up with healthcare tools wherein you have a tool which assists doctors to make good diagnostics, to make good uh, to improve and expedite their diagnostic times and all that. So combination of these skills is what it takes to have a KBE engineer. And then you can have a lot of research. Unfortunately, KBE started off as an industrial need, not as a research need. So there's quite less amount of research work done on this. But now you have a lot of organizations which have which are doing research in KBE. I have come across a few universities who are doing research in aerospace KBE. Mathematical modeling, literature review is what it takes. You have to have experimental validation, and you can build up your custom modules. You whatever knowledge or physics you have developed in your research work, that you can translate into a KBE tool. The best example of that is something called ParaPy. ParaPy is a KBE module of it's a Python library, which is KBE Python library, which is developed by a few researchers from TU Delft. So I came to know this through one of my seniors in my bachelor days, who is doing his PhD in uh, aerospace engineering from TU Delft. So we so during our discussion, he told me about this. He did not develop this, but few of his colleagues developed this. So a lot of opportunities like this we can come up with uh, about KBE. So finally, summarizing the entire presentation, it's quite an efficient process for product development. Huge horizon of applications. A lot of promising career opportunities, especially people. The typical career graph is people transition from being design engineers to KBE engineers. Uh, just by learning a few technical programming languages, the software architectures, the concepts of software engineering. It has got a wide technology landscape and quite promising research opportunities. So these are the references, and thank you for your patient hearing. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to take those.
Thank you, Brother Abdullah. It was quite interesting and very insightful also. I hope every one of us had something to take back with this webinar. So participants, we can now have any questions if you have, or any discussions or any thoughts that you have. We can have discussion around that. So participants can unmute themselves and pose their question to Brother Abdullah.
Very nice presentation, mashallah. So this is getting used across the industry, right? So
Yes.
KB is now across the industry. So any industry so can go through this process.
Yes, absolutely. So it can be used across industries. The concept is same. The application, or the methodology to build up the KBE tool differs from industry to industry.
Okay.
Assalamu alaikum, brother. Sorry, I joined very late. Just wanted to know, is any particular courses available for this? Because I already in embedded systems around 12 years of experience. How can I get into this?
There are no courses available for this as such, but you can do courses or you can learn technologies about regarding what it takes to become a KBE engineer. Since you are in embedded systems, you will be familiar with the programming knowledge, of course, and then you have to be good with your domain expertise, and then uh, based on the requirements, you can apply for posts in all the organizations. One thing I forgot to tell you is about when I was telling about career opportunities. Just 2 minutes I'll take to tell you about typical job opportunities. What kind of companies take KBE people and how they do. Uh, Both the service industry and the product companies have opportunities for KBE engineers. The service industry, what they do is they have clients. They have typically the engineering service providers. Not the basically engineering service providers means the clients for whom is manufacturing companies. So those companies, they have clients, and the clients give them the work of translating their systems to KBE systems. So a lot of people are working in that sector. And you have this is about the service company. And the product companies, you have a lot of product companies which have their own teams. They have simulation teams. They have it's called product development IT. Lot of these kind of interdisciplinary teams wherein you have domain experts plus you have your programming people. So and you have people who know both.
थोड़ा पतला करने लेके लाऊं क्या?
So they have their
ऐसे ही
own
करेंगे.
solvers, they have their own softwares, they sit and develop their own softwares for their internal needs. So both product companies and service companies have opportunities for KBE people.
Nice, nice, man. This is anywhere related to data science kind of thing, or it's entirely different, independent of it?
Data science can be applied to this. Data science, of course, it's a buzzword now. It can be applied to almost anything in the world. So in the same way, data science can be very royally applied to your domains.
Okay, okay. Jazakallah.
Any other questions we have? Brother Amir is asking question, but we're not able to hear him.
So, Amir, maybe you can write in the chat box. We can read it for you.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now, or I can
Yes.
put it as a text?
No, I can hear you now, Amir.
Yeah, sorry for the interruption. The question which I had was, as you mentioned about the computer science domain, and you have also mentioned about the the other field domain like mechanical or civil. So how would one bridge the input parameters between them and try to learn that, or try to have a smooth transition to a very optimized tool? Because that kind of anxiety always is there, right? Like, how would that thing take care of the other stuff? So can you shed some light on that?
Yes, it's a very valid question, actually, because the kind of degrees what we get from our graduate schools or postgraduate schools, they are specific to one domain. We don't have major and minor concept, so we are trained in one domain. But usually, what happens is when you aspire to get into this domain, there are two things. One is you can get into a company and the company knows your level. They will train you with the skill what you don't have. A lot of people in KBE domain are mechanical engineers or domain engineers, because I have come across mechanical. I'm telling mechanical engineers. A lot of mechanical engineers are there. They get trained. They have almost zero knowledge on programming and all the software architecture side and all that. But they get trained by their seniors, by their peers and their mentors. And it will not take a lot of time. It takes hardly within 6 months you can build up a commercial KBE application if you have the domain knowledge. Because I'm telling from experience, because when I started off as in this field of KBE, I was a pure mechanical engineer with no knowledge of programming, with absolute zero knowledge of programming. Uh, I'm really thankful to the organization where I started off. They helped me a lot in ramping up with this skill. And on the other side, software engineers, to understand physical uh, phenomenon of your domains, that they will get once they start working on the projects. Because software engineers, the advantage is they know the tools, they know the programming concepts. So once they start actually coding, they interact with the domain experts, and over those interactions and their individual study, they get ramped up on your domain expertise.
Yeah,
So it's
thank you,
always
Abdullah.
a double help.
Thanks for
Any other questions?
Brother Abdullah, are there any limitations of this KBE approach? You think of any?
Limitations is this: initially you have a lot of you spend a lot of time to build up these KBE applications, and a lot of money also. So these are the main things that like till the time your KBE tool is ready, you have to have a lot of brainstorming. You spend a lot of time and money to build up these tools. And second thing is your like the way you design your tool. It should be secure. So that is one pain area, especially we are talking about earlier KBE tools used to be standalone applications on your systems, but now it is moving towards cloud based applications. So the concept of security comes into here. If unless you design your KBE tool very securely, your knowledge can be breached, the IP can be breached. That is one thing.
Thanks, Brother Abdullah. So if you have no further questions, we can conclude this session. So any last question before we wrap up? Okay, in that case, I would like to thanks all the participants, all the audience. And I'd especially like to thank Brother Abdullah about this interesting session on KBE and how we can apply it to our different domains. And hopefully it will be beneficial to all of us, and we can apply these learnings in our respective fields also. And inshallah, we'll keep on having such interesting sessions in coming weekends also. So I would request all of you to join these sessions as well as bring along your friends so that they can also benefit from these expert sessions on different domains. So thanks to all of you. And with this, we can close it. Inshallah. Okay, then. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum assalam.